All righty. Hello, everyone who's joining us. Uh, please give us a few minutes. There's just a few people entering kind of en masse, so we're just going to give it like a minute or two, and then we'll get started. If you aren't on mute already, please mute yourself. Thanks. All right, I think we have enough of a critical mass. So just first of all, hello everyone. I'll introduce myself a little bit further in a moment, but just a few background, a kind of procedural things. Um, First off, I know that everyone is very stressed and scared. So we're here to kind of help ease that pain. We will definitely answer questions. I'll get to that in a second. My objective here is to provide information as up to the minute as I could get it, and I have some very up to the minute things. So that's my goal here, is to arm you with information, first of all, and then second of all, given the landscape of where we are, what can you do to empower yourself and to have as much power as you can in the situation and to be able to make intelligent choices. So that's my goal. Our firm represents, I don't know, we've represented, I think, thousands of federal employees over the course of many years. The head of our federal employment group, Neil, is on with us as well. So, if you have follow-up questions, we'll be providing our information, and you can reach out if you like. But I'm going to do my best to get to everything I can this evening. I'm going to be delivering a presentation for about maybe 20 minutes. It's primarily informational. There is some background, so there's like a context for our conversation that I think is very important. But then most of it is just kind of what's going on now, what can I do about it? After that, I'll take questions. So you can post questions in the chat. If you like it to be anonymous, that's perfectly fine. You can post it only to the host. We will not use or share any information other than for this purpose, other than we will also share and send this PowerPoint to you. We'll also be, by the way, recording this, and we'll be sharing that as well on our website. And if we can, we'll make it accessible in the email as well and also online. I wanted you to know we have 2 ASL interpreters who just donated their time, so that's amazing. If they are on like the spotlight, you should be able to see them. They are Laura Hamilton and Kristen Balzerini, and I just want to thank you both very much for doing this. As I said, this is being recorded, and my contact information will be at the end of this presentation. Okay, I think that covers most of the basics. So let's dive in. Oops. There we go. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about myself, but I'm a partner in a law firm that does a lot of this work as well as many other things. I've been practicing for 30 years-ish. And so hopefully between me and everyone in our firm and the research we've done, oh yes, that reminds me. Before I get going, there was one thing I wanted to do, which was to extend thanks, first of all, to my amazing wife, my daughter, my partner, Sean, Neil, and several federal employees who generously spoke with me, some off the record, providing information, some of what I can, I'm going to share tonight as well. So I just want to, this is really about you. And I mostly want to thank you. Y'all have been provided dedicated public service for however long you've been in the federal government. And so whatever happens now, but you still deserve an incredible note of gratitude and thanks on behalf of the American people. So now I'm going to move on. So first of all, the starting point is I want you to know what your rights already are. And this is unchanged. And that's important because no matter what all these executive orders and everything else said, these laws are still in place. So there are really three primary avenues that federal employees have to seek protection. First is Title VII, and that has to do with discrimination based on a protected class. So, there are, by the way, as I said, you'll have this presentation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on details, but rather just kind of give you a summary of what your rights are. So this is still the law. DEI programs or no, this is still the law. You still cannot, a federal agency still cannot discriminate against somebody or retaliate against somebody because they engage in protected conduct related to a protected class. And so if that happens, and this is a big message I want to send tonight, if this is happening to you, please file a complaint. It doesn't matter that nobody will do anything with it, or there may not even be, I think I have something in here that even if there is no head of the EEOC, if your agency has nobody in a department to go to, just file it, send it, whoever you can to have a record that you did that. The reason for this is that you have 45 days to file a complaint, and if you don't, you lose all of your rights. You cannot later argue that you were waiting to see what happened or there was nobody to talk to. You have to figure it out. I may say this a few times this evening, but I'm not trying to sell ourselves or anything, but this is an area where if you're confused or have questions, you really should get a consult with a professional, legal professional, or even somebody at your union. Basically, make sure you know what you're doing, because if you don't do it right, it's over. So no matter what's going on right now, Title VII is still active. The second area of protection is what we call whistleblowers. So what it means to be fraud, waste, and abuse or unlawful obviously is a massive gaping, space. So it's hard to answer that question. There are some things that are much more obvious than others. The thing, though, is that if you are experiencing this or you're aware of it or you think what's happening is illegal, you have the right to report it and you are protected from doing so. I just want to pause for a moment because certainly in this outrageously tumultuous and chaotic environment, and I do think that is the goal. Whether you like that or not, I do think that is the goal. When you're in an environment like that, it's natural to be afraid to be a whistleblower. This is particularly true in that some of the executive orders clearly direct people to report other people. So for sure, that's a pretty hostile environment to blow the whistle. So what I will say is that it won't necessarily prevent you from being fired because you can't stop people from firing you. What it will do is provide significant protection for you in order to go and assert those legal rights. And it is very clear to me it is already happening. Notwithstanding anything else that is going on, you still have those rights and they are being prosecuted. Now, what happened in the last Trump 1 cycle is that he did not, so in order to pursue these claims, you report to the Office of Special Counsel first. It's basically an administrative step. They are supposed to investigate things, but they don't. And that is not administrations or politically specific. It's just an office that is overwhelmed. So eventually it gets kicked out and you can go to court or what's called the MSPB, the Merit Systems Protection Board. Back in 2016, Trump did not appoint anybody to run that till almost the end of his term. And so claims just sat. And I had several claims that just sat. But nevertheless, if you believe that you're a whistleblower, that you have whistleblower rights, you should still follow the process. Go to the Office of Special Counsel. You can do it anonymously. When it gets kicked out, you can file your claim with the MSPB. And you can get legal counsel then or do it yourself. But either way, you're on file. And it may sit for 4 years. Okay, at least you've got it on file. So what I'm trying to emphasize is, notwithstanding everything that's going on, if you think you're entitled to a remedy, or you think that there's a right, law that's been violated, you need to exercise that. If you're afraid to blow the whistle, then consult with, again, either consult with counsel or union or, you know, whomever in your own personal life to make sure you talk that through. But just know that that right exists. Okay, the last one is just a general appeal to the Merit Systems Protection Board, and this is in the circumstance where you've been removed, demoted, or suspended, and it's based on, you basically want to challenge the determination by the agency. In other words, you are arguing that the agency's decision was arbitrary and capricious. For those of you familiar with 714, this was a law that was passed again in the first Trump presidency that basically made it much easier to fire a large group of people. We'll talk about the new executive order in a moment, by lowering the standard of proof and lowering the standard of a variety of issues. But we litigated this on an appeal and won the issue of retroactivity, but it still applies, and it applies now and prospectively. What I'm mentioning this to you because it is already very easy to terminate most federal employees. It's just that there's a decent amount of due process that's laid over on top of it. And most federal employers, you know, the managers and so forth, just don't want to bother unless it's really serious, or unless they actually are, you know, racist or whatever, you know, like there could be that kind of motive. But the point is, it's not an overused thing. I believe that's going to change, as we'll discuss. But again, I want you to know that if you are demoted, removed, or suspended, you do have a challenge to the MSPB right now. And that has not changed, even if the standard for removal has lowered. It just means it'll be harder and harder for you to win. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to cover the policies that I currently know about and where they currently are. First is the policy regarding remote work. There's really two different sets of policies. One has to do with basically remote work at all, and then the other has to do with like telecommuting and teleflexibility. The law basically says that if you have to return to work, pretty much. There was a 50-mile radius, but even that's pretty unclear, because 50-mile radius from what exactly? Anyway, basically, the vast majority of the workforce must return to work. I do not believe this has anything to do with the viability or that returning to work makes the workplace better or worse. I think it is simply I think the overall strategy is to make it as difficult as possible for federal employees to compel them to leave. So if you just consider that as a baseline, whether you agree or disagree with it, you can see that the broadest interpretation of these policies are going to be applied. And I have some more information about that in a moment. There are, however, ways around this. A military spouse, for example, pretty much can't be compelled to return to work. In the military in general, if you're on a base in a foreign country, there are a lot of circumstances in which this just doesn't apply. But it is still a good 80% of the workforce or more. What you can do about this, if you're in this situation where you're being ordered to return to work, aside from the buyout offer that I'll talk about, the real way in this door is through accommodations and disabilities. If you either have or think you have a disability that would require you to work from home, then that is the route. Generally speaking, keep in mind that you still must be able to perform the essential functions of the job. So you're going to have to demonstrate both that returning, basically working remotely, is necessary. There is no lesser option, and you still can perform your job. But if you can do that, you will be protected. And notwithstanding everything that I'm seeing, the information I have suggests that this is going to be a pretty viable route. The reason isn't that they care about people with disabilities or anything, but rather that they're taking the easiest road. it is easier to let the hand, relatively speaking, maybe thousands of people, but relative to the millions of employees, the number of people who will go through this process and fight their way through to the end is low enough that if you actually take it on, you have a decent chance. Again, this is a thicket. Make sure you understand what you're doing. Seek consultation if you don't. Okay. Oh yeah, I was going to just make a note on childcare and all of that. As best I can tell, nobody cares. So I think this is a good time to put in the buyout offer, and we can come to the rest. You're about to, if you have not already received it, you will receive a memo, and it may come from OPM, but it's probably going to come from probably the head of your agency. And it basically is going to, I guess this already public news is that there's just going to be this buyout. And the buyout, just so you all know, it applies to literally every federal employee with the exceptions of like national security and military and so forth. By the way, if you are in the military, there are definitely special rules. I'm not trying to get, granular about that, but just make sure you check in and compare it to your specific role in the military, which branch and so forth. So I'm sure you understand that if you're in that. But generally speaking, the letter sets forth the ability of anybody who wishes to, it says, it begins effective January 28th and is available to all federal employees. So I guess it's all until February 6th. If you resign under this program, you will retain all pay and benefits regardless of your daily workload, and you will be exempted from all applicable in-person work requirements until September 30th, 2025, or you can accelerate that if you basically quit. And then there's a discussion of the plan, but basically what it is every federal employee will have until February 6th to quit if they want to voluntarily, like with honor, so to speak. It's a voluntary separation. There's no cause. It doesn't affect FERS. There's no impact on anything. Of course, there's an impact if you need to be there for a certain period of time for retirement. Obviously, that's not changed, but to the extent of whatever you have vested and whatever would apply will apply. Also, you will basically get how many months of severances? 7 months. And obviously the date is tied to, well, it's not really, I'm not exactly sure why September 30th, but I'm sure it's tied to, end of year. So that must be what it is. But you can resign earlier if you wish. I think it just means that you can leave earlier. It just means you don't get the administrative pay. So basically you have to quit by February 6th. You don't have to do anything. You probably won't have any work other than transition work, and you can do whatever you want and find another job and start that on October 1st. That's the plan. It's basically a 7-month separation plan. It allows you to, it's coming from OPM. Sorry, I can see now it is actually going to come from OPM to all federal employees. And I will talk about the HR1 email for those of you who know about that in a minute too. But so this is going to go out to every employee and from OPM. One other thing I wanted to say about that is that the communication talks about what they're saying are 4 pillars. I'm mentioning this to you because you can map your own situation into it. The one has to do with returning to work, as we're talking about now. Basically saying you've got to return to work or quit and take the severance. The second thing is what's called performance culture. And that has to do with probationary employees and future hiring. And I just want to put a pin in that because I have something on that in a moment. And then the rest of it is basically what they're saying is standards of loyalty and trustworthiness. So I'll leave that for your interpretation. And then, streamlining the workforce, which basically means chopping up all the agencies. So I I'll just read what it says here. These actions are likely to include the use of furloughs and the reclassification to at-will status for a substantial number of federal employees, as well as the majority of federal agencies are likely to be downsized through restructuring, realignments, and reductions in force. There's a mass layoff plan. The other piece of it is what's called performance culture, which in my mind, I mean, it reads insulting if you're a federal employee, to be honest with you, but essentially what it's saying, and this ties into the probationary employee issue, essentially what it's saying is if your performance ratings are not, there's the meets, exceeds, but if let's just use 1 to 5. If 1 is lowest and 5 is highest, if you're not a 5 or a 4.5, you will be fired. It's kind of like that. So that's what this memo is saying is you're signing up to this or you're hitting reply and writing the word resign. So I'm going to come back to this again, but I wanted to cover this in connection with remote work first. Okay, on DEI, all those programs are being eliminated, as everybody knows. Basically, in terms of what I want to say about this is that this is an elimination of a program. It's not an elimination of the principle. So there is no DEI agent. If you did DEI, you're gone. Okay, that actually is not. I mean, it's a lot of people, but relatively speaking, it's a smaller group of people. It does not and cannot legally eliminate the principles of racial diversity and the principles of Title VII of protected classes, gender, sex, etc., disability, so forth. It cannot contravene the Rehabilitation Act, which is how federal employees have access to the Americans with Disabilities Act and as amended. Meaning, if you have a disability, or also the Age Discrimination and Employment Act. So what I'm trying to say is that if you are an employee who has those laws apply to you, you still have those protections, notwithstanding the fact that the DEI programs underneath it that were supposed to implement some of the policies that would promote and reduce claims under Title VII, you still have Title VII. It is still there. And so is the Rehab Act. So my point is that if you feel that you're facing or suffering from discrimination based on a protected class or being retaliated against for disclosing that discrimination, DEI agent program or not, you still have those rights. Okay. One of the things mentioned in here has to do with Schedule F, basically. And this was what Trump was trying to do in 2020 and now is doing. Basically what it's trying to do is push as many employees as possible into 714, meaning it's essentially designed to make it as easy as possible to terminate federal employees, all federal employees, by putting as many of them in the bucket, regardless of career or not, in the bucket of like super easy to fire. And that is regardless of your position, your title, your service, none of that matters. It basically makes it super easy. And I think this is a setup, as you see, as I'm just mentioning this performance culture standard. I was just speaking with somebody who's a federal employee, but is a close friend of mine who we were talking about this issue. And it's basically what is going to happen is that if you're a probationer, so I think everyone knows there's a list was compiled of every probationary employee everywhere. My friend actually is a probationary employee, and he assumed that he would not be affected by this because his agency does very specific military related work. They just hired 200 people 5 months ago and have 200 openings. Of course, there's a hiring freeze, but the openings are sitting there. And apparently that is irrelevant. So, by the way, some of the news I'm delivering, and probably a lot of it is unpleasant, maybe bad for you, like, ugly. I am not sugarcoating anything, nor am I saying an opinion about it. I'm just trying to give you the complete information as directly as I can. But I have outrageous compassion and like sadness about it for how people are affected. So, okay, so I want to come back to this, and this is probably the biggest hammer there is, aside from these the categories of people. This is a big hammer because if you now change the performance standards that everybody has to meet, whatever the heck a 5 is, it's very easy to set it up to make that impossible. And anybody who's been a federal employee for more than 3 years knows this is true. I mean, this stuff can be messed around with. So it can be made very, very easy to manage someone out pretty quickly if they don't voluntarily leave. And that is the import of this memo that you're going to receive, I believe. So if you're a probationary employee, from what I understand, a separate memo other than the one I was just talking about that has not yet been issued, and I don't have a copy, but I have very good source information that a memo is coming out shortly to all probationary employees and their managers, and it basically is going to say all probationary employees must be evaluated immediately, and if they don't, meet up these bullets, remote return to work, performance culture, all of that, they don't prove their loyalty, they don't prove their trustworthiness, they're not a 5, 6 out of 5, they should be fired immediately. And the lean is going to be towards termination. My friend has 24 people in his office, and he's 99% certain all of them will be terminated. So, again, in the area of compassion, I mentioned that he has 2 kids. His wife is in the military, and he does not know what he's going to do because this created the stability for him to be with his kids, for example. So that's just one story. Again, whether you agree or disagree with these executive orders, there's an impact, and I think it needs to be recognized. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that this is a beware clause, and this is not going to go away. Also wanted to make a note about SES employees. Okay, perfect. SES employees. If you're an SES employee, there's a whole batch of stuff related to you. The general principle and concept is the same. It's to make it easier to get rid of you and to make it more unpleasant for you. SES employees have certain protections that remain unchanged. So if you feel that you have a protection, this often shows up with Equal Pay Act and sometimes in gender discrimination arena. Those rights are still there. Also, as SES employees, you have other like roles and responsibilities that put you in the executive level. And so far, Trump has not issued anything specific to that level. So, not that you're free from scrutiny, but I just don't think they've gotten there yet really fully. If you're in the military, the main thing I wanted to know, of course, we're aware that about, is reinstating all the people who wouldn't get vaccinated, which is going to cost taxpayers some billions, and those people are going back to work if they choose. But even those people will have to agree to all these terms. You've seen the removing of transgender protections. That's basically the summary. The one thing I wanted to note about if you're in the military is that there are different rules. So please make sure you sort that out and know what the rules are and note that they're different. Okay. This is just a quick summary, and I'm going to get to questions. This is a synthesis of what I've been studying this for several days now, and many people have provided lots of information. And this is what I believe is going on in totality. First, so what we see is there's a hiring freeze with buyout offers. And as an employment lawyer, when I see that, I see a company that's trying to cannibalize itself. So, and then that's combined with what we call wholesale removals, we use those to evaluate like discrimination claims. A company fires 1,000 people, it's hard to say it's because this person is, this race or whatever. What's surprised to me is that the wholesale removals are not, they don't seem to be agency specific. They don't seem to be, there's no consideration to whether it's military related or whether it would be of importance, of whether it would be importance to the country. Like there's not a studied criteria. It is just these categories of people from easiest to hardest to fire, remove. And if we can't remove them, make it.
Oh, you're driving?
Milana, can you mute yourself, please? Or maybe Joanne, you can do that.
Working on it.
Oh, yeah, I got it. No problem. I'm also a host. No worries. Thank you. Yeah, so the point is that if you put all the totality of what's happening and the way it's being done, what I think is going on is a complete redo. Basically, they want as many people to leave as possible. They want to contain, well, of course, you're aware of the grant freeze, which I can't really tell you what that means yet. I'm not sure anybody really knows. I mean, but the point is that, they're basically hitting the reset button in a large way. So there should be, not should, like a good thing, but I anticipate a mass exodus. And then anybody who's still around is going to really have to comply to these very rigid standards. Okay. Also, lastly, I'll mention that some of these have been challenged. There's challenges to some of these executive orders. And I'm going to just skip past that because there isn't anything that has really, really made a difference or impacted anything. So I'm going to skip past that. I think it would be better to try and get to some of your questions. But the overall message, though, is this. It would be useful for you to evaluate your situation in light of what I'm saying and make some decisions for yourself. That's how you get power. So sure, if you're going to stay at work and there's bad things happening, they're illegal, report them. But also take into account, you also might be able to pursue a claim and leave. If you take the buyout, you'll be signing a release, so you're done with them. but you might decide to leave and sue also. In other words, you have options. There are things you can do. And if you don't know what to do, then consult with someone. But you are not powerless, notwithstanding the chaos. Okay. In terms of some of the questions, okay,
Dave, if I can interrupt for a moment, I just want to let you know that there's a bunch of anonymous questions that you can't see. So why don't you go through the questions that are to everyone, and when you're done with those, I can read the anonymous ones to you.
Got it. Okay. So there are many questions, but thank you, Joanne. There are many questions about probationary employees and periods and timelines. And the basic thing is it doesn't matter whether you've been a probationary employee for a day or you're across a year tomorrow. Well, tomorrow you should be okay. but basically it's going to be across the board. Every agency, every probationary employee is going to be evaluated at some absurd standard. And this memo that you're going to get is the government telling you before you go through all that, you might want to quit. That's basically what they're saying. And here's 7 months of severance to incentivize you. Okay. Many questions about remote anywhere and bargaining unit employees. I don't know. There's a seminar on collective bargaining. So your unions, if you're a union employee, your unions are setting up sessions on this. I have one from the VA. Just you contact your CBU, whoever is running your union. They can tell you what's going on. The current status is that some of this is not going to stick, but until it's litigated, it's there. And that is kind of the idea, I think. The idea is not to worry about whether what they're doing fully complies with the law, but rather to see how fast they can get it done before anybody can do anything about it. And at the same time, I should say that a lot of what they're doing, from my analysis, is perfectly legal. It is not illegal. There are some things I would challenge, like the right of somebody to not have to tattletale on somebody else. I think that's a First Amendment problem. So there are problems in all of this, and the unions, there's definitely stuff there. But most of this is within the bounds of constitutionality. That reminds me, HR 1. The only other thing I wanted to mention was that there's an email that got sent from OMB. It was like HR1 at, omb.gov. And it basically said, please reply to this email to let me know you got it. And there was all kinds of mass confusion about this, and mass reply all emails went around. But basically what that is OPM confirming every federal employee email address. What that means is that OPM will have a database, because when you reply, it captures that automatically. So there will be a database of every federal employee's email address, which would allow the president or whomever to instantly communicate with every single federal employee without having to go through, for example, an agency head providing notice or whatever. If that sounds scary, I mean, it is. I also don't really know, other than the ability to issue broad communications, I don't think it's going to have a day-to-day impact on your life anytime soon. I think it's more of a scare tactic than anything. The government could always communicate with all employees if it needed to. So I just wouldn't stress over that too much. There are numerous questions about the impact of the remote work issue. And the bottom line is, I live here. It's a hardship on my family. I just moved because of this. I can give you 1,000 things. The bottom line is, unless you qualify for a disability accommodation or are otherwise exempt, it doesn't matter. Sorry, but it matters to me, but apparently it doesn't matter to the current administration. So what you need to know is to know that. Just be aware that that's true, and then process that and decide what you need to do for yourself. Many people are asking questions about being threatened, intimidated. They're afraid to speak up. Their personal comms are being monitored. So again, that's all scare and fear tactics. The amount of data is so enormous. It's unrealistic that anything could be done with all of this stuff. The government does have the right to do most of what they're doing. And the Patriot Act and some other laws are so broad that fighting this will be difficult. What you can do about this, however, is you can create private networks, private modes of communications. You have the right to organize. You have the right to assemble. As I said before, I can't stop, you from being fired because I can't control other people. But if you're exercising the right to assemble and you're fired, that's illegal. So you would have a claim, notwithstanding anything else that's going on. Whether or not to blow the whistle or to remain silent and all of that is a personal choice for you. What I recommend you do, though, if you're experiencing this stuff, is to speak to someone, both to understand what your rights are and then to practically know whether this is the right thing to do in the right way and at the right time. There are ways to blow the whistle effectively or anonymously or in a way that you can protect yourself, even now. At the same time, I just want to say that if you're feeling afraid to express yourself, that's on purpose. Whatever your view of that, that is the plan. That is one part of several pieces, as I've been sharing, designed to make it as unpleasant to be there as possible. it's kind of a last man, it's like a survivor game. They're trying to make as many people quit as possible because that's the cheapest way to do it. As somebody who's an employment lawyer and has done this for companies and represented employees on the other side a lot, that I can tell you that's what's happening. It's an intentional and very overt strategy to have as many people leave as possible and to make it as horrible as possible so that they do. So that isn't a mistake if that's what you're feeling. You still have those rights. Whether and how to exercise them is fact specific, it's personal. So, but still you do have those rights. The other main area is people who are just sitting on paid leave and they don't have access to anything and they don't know what to do. All of my intel suggests that if you are currently on paid leave, you are likely to be fired, unless they can't for some reason, or unless you're considered like a critical to national security or something. But in general, anybody who's currently on paid leave it should consider themselves significantly at risk and just take that into account. If you believe you have viable legal claims, get a consultation. If it's not that, if you think it's something that's not illegal, it's just, unpleasant and awful, then consider that your paid leave status is unlikely to remain for much longer.
Here are anonymous questions here and on the back.
Oh my. Okay, I'm trying to come into all right. There's a broad sort of category of questions that are basically saying, how can they do this? Isn't this wrong? Isn't this illegal? We don't even know what's happening. How can you take remote people and make them not remote? A million questions like that basically are, how can they do this? Or can they do this? That kind of thing. Much of it they can do, and some things I think they can't, but they're doing anyway until somebody stops them and people are trying to stop them. But until then, it's what's happening. The odds of anything changing before February 6th are extremely low. Extremely low. So that's kind of they set that deadline on purpose. They're trying to accelerate. So my invitation is to stop asking the question why. Stop. I know we all we're in Washington, we have our opinions and feelings and thoughts and we talk about it. That's fine. But in terms of your focus and your energy, in terms of your employment, what I'm inviting you to do is just stop asking why. Why are they doing this? How can they do this? This is wrong. It shouldn't happen. I would just give up those questions, because what does it matter? Even if they can't do it, they're doing it, and people who can do something about that are taking legal action. If you think something is happening to you that shouldn't happen, like a violation of Title VII, or one of these things that you think are illegal, get a legal consultation and find out if you're right. Then pursue that remedy. So what I'm saying is take action. Just stop talking about it. It's happening. This is what it is. I read you the memo that is very clear to me. The goal is to have as many people quit by February 6th as possible. And then after that, to make it incredibly onerous. So that's what's going to happen. And you still have all of your rights under Title VII, MSPB Appeals, and whistleblower law. Also, some of what is happening is eventually going to get kicked, but it's going to take a while. And it definitely won't happen by February 6th. So the overall suggestion is focus on what you're going to do, what legal rights you want to assert or not. Consult with someone about that. And otherwise decide what you're going to do personally. Accept that it is the way that it is and figure out what to do. As heartbreaking as it is. You've been a federal employee for 25 years and you're like, well, basically this is horrible. Yeah, I get it. And factually, that is what is. There was one other, our rights if we are within kids, so remote. Also should mention that the MSPB appeals do not apply to probationary employees. And if you're on admin leave, it might, is the general question. Okay. Okay. Last three things. First, people are asking about how to join a union. And if you're in a union, you should definitely already be in consulting with them. If you're not, you should be able to join one if one exists. If one does not exist for your job or agency, you could try to form one, but that would be quite a project. Then the other, hang on just 1 second. Yeah. So I think what I'm going to do now is summarize. Before I do that, I just want to say, first off, thank you for being on this call and participating in this and asking these awesome, insightful questions and just starting this dialogue. It's really important. And I appreciate you. So thank you. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is if you have questions, you have follow-up, at the end of the present, I will put up, I guess, Joanna, I should put up at the end of this, I'll put up our contact info, but we are going to email.
We did already.
Oh,
we did already. Yep.
Oh, okay. We're going to make sure everybody has the presentation or you have it already and our contact information is in there. This is true if you have questions. Also, if you want a copy of this presentation, and we may do this again if we can update it, that would be, maybe we can do that. And if you have legal questions, of course. Aside from that, pursuing legal claims and having questions about all of this. The third point I want to make is I strongly encourage you and for you to share with others, who are in this situation, to understand and just accept this is what's happening. And what's happening is the elimination of as many people as possible, either by force, making it horrible, or voluntary departure by taking the severance. Yeah. I invite you to give up arguing or fighting about it, let the unions do it, or consult a lawyer if you want to do it. Otherwise, just assume this is what's happening, because it is, and decide what you're going to do for you.
Wow.
Okay. I guess that's it. All right, Joanne. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay. And
she doesn't.
I wish we're going to disconnect.
How does she do this with the flu?
All right, everyone.
Okay, she does.
Thank you so much. Great information.
Can you
Great
get
information.
kids ibuprofen? And if we're low on
Dave, I
thank
do
you.
have a question.
Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah, I did too.
Hi.
So we're good.
This is Shelby.
Okay.
Hold on, Shelby. Hey, whoever's on mute, just pause. Okay. I mean, whoever's talking, thank you. All right, Shelby, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hi. Yes,
Yeah.
I had put in the chat, there is some information about 100% military spouses being put. My husband is 100% disabled, and I believe that I qualify for the exemption based on, is that correct?
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
You should definitely pursue it.
Okay, and I can contact you about helping me pursue that. Is that
sure.
correct?
Oh yeah, of course. Yes.
You're here in Tampa, correct?
Well, our office is in Tampa and DC. So I'm based in DC. Neil's based in Tampa. There's obviously federal employment is, it's a lot in DC. So we work in both places. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. I just wanted to exercise that as opposed to my reasonable accommodation because I'm a long hauler and autoimmune. So thank you. I appreciate you.
That's my pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, I just have one more question regarding the remote work. If space is an issue at the VAs, do you foresee that can be an exemption among your agency director?
That's gonna be up to the agency director. The directive is, if at all possible, bring everyone back to work. Oh, there is something on what you just said, actually. They addressed that sort of indirectly. Yeah. Going forward, we also expect our physical offices to undergo meaningful consolidation and divestitures, potentially resulting in physical office relocations for a number of federal workers. So basically what they're saying is if your space is too small to come back, they're going to close that office and move you to like a bigger group space somewhere else. And you'll either go or leave. I'm not being harsh. I'm just saying that's what the memo is saying. So my recommendation is the same. Challenge, unless you have like we just heard, like a military spouse exemption, something like that, where you clearly know that, or you believe you can make that out, or a disability or discrimination claim. That's fine. Then there's legal viability there. But if it's just that the office is too small, what they're going to do is move you to a bigger office with more people. Make it more of a warehouse, which is horrible, but that's what they're going to do. It's like Silicon Valley style, basically.
Just a general question about that. Will they allow, like I had posted in there, like I work in Northern California, but I live in Florida. Will they make exception for me to work in Florida, even though I'm assigned to California?
No.
No, is that what you said?
No, correct. No, it would be the case. The exception would be two exceptions. One, you qualify in some way for that, and this under other laws. And the second would be that your manager decides that to keep you, and decides to have it be an exemption because of business need. So it also is clear in here that there is discretion at the management level. So the head of the agency and his or her subordinates can be directed. And so what I think is going to happen is that in the agencies where you have, competent but very right-wing people, I'll just say, example, Marco Rubio. Again, no opinion about it, it's just fact. That agency will implement this stuff with dogmatic precision and as much as possible. But if, on the other hand, Pete Hegsworth, I don't know that he really knows what to do. So I think that agency is going to slow down. So like the implementation of some of this stuff is going to take longer, which is to employees' benefits. So it really is going to be agency specific whether what you're describing will stick. But in general, if what they say to you is your job's in California, we'll see you on Monday, that's a bit of a problem. So anyway, I hope this is helpful.
I have a quick question about the buyout. If they offer when they offer the buyout, what if you're close to retirement? Will you lose your retirement if you take the buyout?
You mean you have no eligibility yet, you mean?
Right. So I'm like 3 months shy. So if I take the buyout, yeah.
Well, you'll probably make 3 months. Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't think so.
And I'm currently on FMLA, and I am in the DEIA workspace. And I haven't received the administrative leave because I'm on FMLA. But
right. As soon as you come back, you'll be on leave again. Yeah.
Right.
So you're going to be terminated anyway. So you should probably, you're going to be terminated. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hi, Dave. Shondella Murray here. You mentioned with regard to the return to work for remote employees, and you said something about if you're within the 50-mile radius that you would have to report. That's the first time I saw anything about within the 50-mile radius.
Yeah, that was the original executive order. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just was wondering if you could provide a link or something that I could look at that more, because I'm looking at the executive order.
It's changed. So I'm sorry. I wasn't what I was trying to say is the original thing was a 50-mile radius, but the new order is everybody. It doesn't, there are exemptions. So like if you're, let's say you're based in Atlanta, but you're, in Korea, you're exempt. And their military spouses are exempt, I believe. So, but I don't think anybody else is going to be exempt. So the woman who was in Florida is going to have to choose, probably.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
For that colleague that was saying she is in Florida but works for California, can they reassign your duty location to to an agency in Florida?
They could. Sure.
The interesting part is
that.
my duty location is actually my home.
Oh, okay. Well, that might be fine. And that will probably be fine because that's an exemption. It actually says it somewhere. Not in that words, but it says if you're remote is where you are, that's where you are, which is the same thing as if you're in Korea. But yes, sure, you could, your agency could decide to reassign you into Florida, and then you'd have to go into work to an office, but it would be near your home in theory. But the agency could also be cruel and say, your job starts Monday in Los Angeles, see you there. And I would suspect that they would do the last one because they want to try to make you quit. So that's, my goal was to make you quit, that's what I would do.
Hi, do you know if the buyout will be eligible or available to DEI personnel? Though, especially because we've all received the RIF notice.
Did you receive a RIF notice?
Yeah, so I work for the DOJ and I received a RIF notice with a separation date.
What is the separation date?
25 March.
Oh. Does it say that you're terminated now, or does it say you will be, your last day is?
It says I'll be terminated on 25 March.
Okay.
Well, my last day, my separation date is 25 March.
Fine. I think you can use this then. You would lose, are they offering you a separation pay or anything like that?
Yeah, should I just get a consultation with you?
I really recommend that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I work a lot with DOJ and I do Medicare fraud and other stuff unrelated to this.
Yeah.
And so I've had about a dozen DOJ people either resign or whatever do I know. And so I have some more info on that. Yeah, why don't you just call my office because it's too much for this context, if you don't mind.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Just
go ahead.
Yeah,
sounds good. Thank you.
Just quickly,
Can you hear me?
do you think we can really trust the buyout? I mean, is this really trustworthy?
Oh yeah, this document is legitimate. This is a real memo that's going out from OPM, possibly tomorrow. It's already been announced. I mean, Trump already announced this publicly. I just have the actual memo.
Already received it.
I have mine. I see it.
Yeah, I
there
have
you go.
gotten, I received mine today as well, but in reading, it's not really a buyout. You're still working. It's just a deferred resignation. It's not like,
Yes,
you
right.
take it and that's it. You're still working until September. It's just allowing you to telework until September the 30th. So it's not they called it a buyout, but that's not a buyout. If he goes through and does maybe a Vero or something, that'd be something different. But what he's offering is not a buyout. And if I was the one, I wouldn't take it. He's just allowing you to telework. That's it.
Okay. Well, if what you're saying is that the word buyout is gaslighting, well, yes. Yeah, of course. Yes, you're correct in what you're saying. I do think, though, just to be my view of how this will actually play out is that if you resign, it's not just that you're remote. You're technically available to the government, but I don't think much is going to be expected. So it's kind of like a paid leave scenario. So you're on paid leave. We can reach you if we need to. or you're on admin leave rather. You're on leave, but we can reach you if we need to. And it definitely, you're absolutely right. If you leave earlier, if you voluntarily resign, if you get another job and quit, you forego, you don't get payment through September. So I phrased it the way I did in this talk because I don't want to overwhelm people. I want to give them a sense of what this is practically doing. It's saying you don't go back into work, and you can leave earlier, but otherwise you'll get paid till the end of September. I read this to mean, it even says, to read the exact language, if you resign under this program, you will retain all pay and benefits regardless of your daily workload and will be exempted from all in-person work requirements. So anything that would have happened in person, you won't be at. You won't even be on Zoom. It's not saying we will arrange a Zoom for you. It's saying you will be exempt, which means you won't be there. So it's not that you're participating remotely. That's not what this says. It says you will be exempt, which means you won't be at it. So every meeting that happens is going to be in person. There is no Zoom anywhere for anyone, except the handful of remote people that are left. Given that that's the situation, okay, sure, you're theoretically working for them, but you can't do anything. You're exempted from doing anything. You're not allowed to do anything. So yeah, you're technically right, but realistically, very little is going to be asked of you.
I have a question. I have a question.
We can do both of you. That's fine. No problem.
The question
Hi.
that I have is for the DEI employees who have already been put on administrative leave. So we don't have access to our email accounts. We did not get the test message to try to create this massive database. Do you believe that we're going to be allowed to participate in the buyout? And then two, are there any other considerations that we need to be mindful of? Because even for those of us who weren't in DEIA, but kind of are collateral duty, yeah, exactly, in EEO, but not in DEIA. Are there any considerations that we need to be mindful of? And I'll use specifically for me, I'm a year and a half away from, I'm already retirement eligible, but a year and a half away from my full retirement payout. And so I was waiting for that. So I'm sure an individual consultation will be necessary. However, my question is the whole buyout thing and the CR. I'm just like, should we believe somebody that already has not necessarily been all that believable when it has to, once you lock yourself in, I'm sure like we'll be locked in. But what happens, I used to work for Medicare and they're like, oh, we don't have enough money. We've got to renegotiate.
Yeah. Everybody in DEI will be fired as soon as possible. And it's hard to say because this says all federal employees. It doesn't say federal employees not on admin leave. It doesn't say that. Now, you didn't get this memo. Well, actually, if you're able to log in, you would get it.
We can't. They've already blocked us as of last Wednesday. Yeah.
I know, but you can't log in to reply. So in theory, yes, you have this right. As a practical matter, I have no idea how you'd exercise it. So I think that question is going to have to get answered. Like, there's going to be something from the White House on that. It's going to have to be done. It's not just about DEI. It's probationary employees. Well, that doesn't apply to that. But there are many other employees being put on leave or, in different scenarios. So that has to be answered. I don't know. But in theory, yes. Practically, I wouldn't know how you would do it. Also, given what you just told me about your situation, okay, I think you need to do math. If you were consulting me, I would tell you to do math first before we get into legalities. Figure out what the year and a half, what that difference means. Understand that given what you just told me, the odds of you being terminated are extraordinarily high. So lasting a year and a half, if you're EEO adjacent.
Oh, no. I already know. Definitely no way in heck that I'd be sticking around or allowed to stick around. The question was just about the impact, knowing what my retirement payout would be the longer that I wait.
Yes, of course.
It's the waiting question. And so I'm just like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I might be willing to wait, but I don't even get the letter.
Yeah, I think you should do the math and see how much that really is, because it may not be enough to make it worth it. But if it is, then I do think you should talk to somebody, or maybe even, somebody there. But I do think you should assess it numerically.
Thanks so
That's
much. I
what you need
appreciate
to do.
it.
I hope this is at least a roadmap, a starting point.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
I have
Yes,
a
sir.
question about exemptions in terms of for those who are disabled veterans or 100% disabled veterans who are part of whether DEIA or so forth as a federal employee. Is there any exemptions there for those who are disabled veterans or those who are even reservists?
Are you talking? What are we talking about? Are we talking about remote work or the DEI program?
No, just with in regards to whether if you work in DEI, if you manage DEIA, and the fact that you're a federal employee and you're 100% disabled or you have affiliation with the military as a member.
Right. My understanding of the DEI program is that there are 0 exemptions. So, and that would be constitutional or legal because they're not discriminating against you because of your disability. They're just not taking into account or caring that you have one or served your country. I have my views of that, but there's no legal requirement to consider that. And like I was trying to say earlier, they don't seem to be applying any standard of care, any concept of this person's service or anything. It's just a broad swath, regardless of what's underneath that swath. So if you're in a DEI role, through no fault of your own, regardless of any other protected classes or anything, you're very likely to be fired very soon, or given a severance. They're probably going to. I can't tell because the DEI thing is such a political thing rather than just. Even with some of these other firings, there's a lot of DOJ stuff. They're giving people money, and making them sign things. With DEI, there's the political aspect of it might yield to nothing. So that could be happening. Although there are rules, certainly union people, and there are certain other rules, at least certain categories of employees would have to be given certain monies. So that would happen too. But yeah, it doesn't matter. It matters to me that you're a disabled veteran and I appreciate you, but it does not seem to matter to the administration in terms of this issue.
Okay, thank you for that. And one last add-on to that. In terms of like the Administrative Procedural Act, is that something that's of a potential opportunity there in terms of stopping the process? Because obviously, based on the conversation, there's nothing procedural about it, but just.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Those who are still here, this is basically the ability to challenge the due process or the arbitrariness of the agency's actions, which would be driven by the president. And yes, that is an avenue that can be used. I have done 2 APA actions. They typically cost about $250,000 in legal fees. And also, I'm 100% certain that this Department of Justice will never settle that. So if you want to take a stand on something, sure, I'm in. But the cost of it is extreme, which is why you don't see many. I forgot to mention on the call, but there are multiple anonymous lawsuits, I guess you'd call them, or lawsuits being filed under seal, dealing with several of these issues related to probation and area employees and DEI. There are lawsuits happening that that are sealed. So these issues are being taken up. But the speed with which this is operating, it may be that in the future, probationary employees have more rights, or, it's maybe something done with remote work and all of that. But as far as the people that have been on this call are concerned, it's irrelevant because it'll be too late. You know what I mean?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding, and sorry if you answered this already, but for those employees who are not currently in DEI positions, but were as of November 5th. What is your impression of whether there will be a risk or anything in that manner?
You're not in a DEI position now?
Not currently, but I was under the impression that there was a list that was going for those who were in DEI positions as of November 5th.
Yeah. So if you haven't gotten a letter, you're okay at the moment. Again, this is, I question this is one where I do question the constitutionality. Going into a fishing expedition of people who had once had a role, but aren't currently doing it, and trying to identify personnel information like that, which also requires a qualitative review, like were they or weren't they, at least for some of these positions, I think has a lot of problems in it. And that's why you haven't gotten a letter yet. They're trying to get enough, they want a memo from somebody and their legal team to tell them they can do it, and then they're going to do it. So I do think that's coming. I think you're right. They're trying to figure out who these people are and add them to the list, and those people will be fired. People like you probably have the strongest legal claim around that, incidentally, because it's a retroactive application of something. And I think it causes a due process problem. I think that Trump's team actually knows that, because otherwise they would have already done it. So far they just gathered the list to scare the crap out of you and then send you this so-called buyout offer. But yeah, so right now I think you're okay, but they're going certainly at some point going to try.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hi, I have a question regarding the buyout by February 6th. Will your agency be required to let you know what the status of return to office is and where you will be going before your decision for the buyout?
I have no idea. If I were trying to get you to quit, I wouldn't tell you. So if I had to guess, they'll be vague and indirect, but there's no obligation for them to do that. So that would be a great thing to do if you were an employer who wanted somebody to stay. You'd be like, hey, this is where you're going to be. That would make sense. But if I wanted you to leave, which I believe is the plan, then I would leave you in the dark and, act confused and tell you I don't know. So I think that's what's happening.
If you genuinely like your job and serving the veterans that you serve, would you recommend sticking this out?
I'm not laughing at you. I just say so many people have asked this question, and I don't know. I don't know how to answer it because I've had several people come to me from. Well, actually, even my good friend that I was talking to, I would describe him. I wouldn't describe him as MAGA, but he's definitely a Republican, and that's why he asked me. He just now asked me that same question, basically, anyway, not just for him, but for other people. And these are people who either voted for Trump or at least are Republican anyway, and they're telling me. They're saying like I had somebody who I know is voted for Trump tell me that he thought the prior administration understood their organization better than Trump does. I was like, well, okay, well, anyway, so anyway, that's the general tenor. So the answer to your question is obviously your commitment and passion. You obviously are dedicated public servant. You're on this call. You've been doing it for however many years. So what it's going to require of you is rigid commitment to these standards. Your performance level is going to have to be beyond extraordinary, and however they define that. You'll have to be in the office. Your agency. What agency do you work for? If you're okay saying.
I work for the VA.
Oh, VA. Okay. The VA was one of those places that I thought was going to be safe from a lot of this. And it is not. So the one thing I will say though, if you're a dedicated person at the VA and you can deal with all of this, you have the most fighting chance of everyone. other than like people in like national security or something, of all of the civilian agencies, you have the most likely chance of surviving all of this and being fine. Because even Trump, as much as he's doing these broad swaths, you know, like doesn't matter what agency you're in, and many people in the VA are, like literally thousands of people in the VA are going to get fired. But for all the reasons we've been talking about, but a lot of it's going to be returned to work, but a fair amount of it is going to be the application of 714 and some of these standards. But if you're up for the task of that, the VA is, no president goes too deep into the VA. It's just too much of a hot ball potato. You know this, you've been there. The VA could be whatever mess it is, and it tends to just, they tend not to get too deep into it. I think Obama did initially, and it did not go well. And so, and he backed off. So I just generally think that if you're inside the VA, if you can live with all this stuff, and focus on your job, and none of these other things apply to you, then sure. And I do think that, you know, if there's 3 million workers, there'll probably be 1 million left. There's still going to be a lot of people doing things that can just do a perfectly fine job. They don't mind being in the office, and their bosses leave them alone. You know, it'll be fine. It's going to smooth out. You know, this chaos is going to go on for a while, and then it'll smooth out. And whoever's left will be there. So yes, it is possible to do that. You stand the highest chance I could think of.
I have a quick question. If you're on FMLA, can they touch you at all while you're on FMLA?
Are you not while you're on FMLA? Not
Okay.
legally while you're on FMLA.
Not legally. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question about the buyout. So if you actually take the buyout, do you forego your pension? If you are a federal employee, you forego any rights to that pension? You could just take whatever you're vested in?
Correct. I interpret this to mean that your last day of work is September 30th, unless you choose to resign early. So if you take this so-called buyout, in theory, you're still a federal employee. So you're being paid to stay there. So all of your benefits, everything remain the same, and your pension will accrue. But as of October 1st, it's done, whatever it is. There's no accrual, there's no acceleration, nothing. Actually, OPM legally can't do that. So you can't accelerate it.
So if you take the buyout and you can you retire at?
Yes. Oh, can you take the buyout and retire?
Yes.
You can take the buyout and retire in the middle of it.
Okay.
Because it says that you can, basically what you're saying is I'm resigning effective September 30th, but I could accelerate that. So yeah, you could take this buyout and then resign on September 29th and max out your pension.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a numbers game. The good thing, most federal employees are familiar with these kinds of numbers games, so you just have to rethink how you're doing it. That's everybody. Oh, sorry.
Do you think the independent agencies are strongly affected? Like, what if you're not an appropriated agency?
I don't know what do you mean? What agency?
Your funding is, so like the banking regulatory agencies and stuff like that, like SEC.
What about them?
Are they impacted by this? Because they're not funded through tax dollars.
But they're federal employees.
True, yes.
Yeah. It also applies to most Smithsonian employees too. Not all. There are some that are exempt, and there may be exceptions to what I just said. You may be pointing in the direction of some exceptions, but they're slim. Like, I think the commissioner of the SEC can't be fired that way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are certain positions that you can't just, even the president can't just fire the person, even though he says he can. So I think there are some exceptions, but for the most part, yeah, it doesn't. The fact that you're in a regulatory agency, as far as I can tell, they're going to wipe out the IG's office. My partner was just telling me I had reporting to the IG in the presentation. And my partner was like, we're not sure if there's going to be an IG, so you should probably not leave that in there. So yeah. Okay.
Do you have any advice for someone who is 1.5 years away from public service loan forgiveness? Like, just stick with it. I'm almost there. And also, like, we can't trust that this will stay intact, but still. So
as long as if you're not already on the chopping block and you can deal with the terms and you can stick it out, then of course you should do it,
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Patrice. I'm with the Department of Education, Federal Student Aid. I'm confused about the resign by September 30th. I'm sorry, September 30th, 2025. Does that mean you get your pay through September 30th, 2025, and then you get a severance package?
There's no severance package.
Oh, so you just work. They are doing you a favor and allowing you to work until September 25th, even though you're resigning, and that's the end of it. You get nothing.
You would be on paid administrative
slightly.
leave.
Yeah, you're. It's not really paid administrative leave. It is paid administrative leave in effect.
Yes.
Technically, you're an employee working from home, but you're also exempt from attending anything in person. Everything is going to be in person, so you're exempt from attending anything. So what it basically means is they can
separation incentive payments are capped at 25,000. So the workaround is to put everybody who takes this buyout on administrative paid leave.
100%.
But they're calling it a buyout. Yep. Hey, thank you.
Oh, yes. Oh, is the word buyout deceiving, gaslighting?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Of course. Yes, definitely.
All right. Thank you. I just wanted to clear that up.
What does this do to minimum retirement ages in the midst of all of that? Whether it's the buyout or sticking around, is that waived, or will, if you choose to retire, will you still be penalized for, not reaching the minimum retirement age, even if you have the years?
Correct. You will be penalized. Think of the worst case scenario, and that's pretty much how this is written to go. I'm sorry, but that's basically what it is. So MRA it is what it is. Whatever your age is, your years are. If you take this, that's what it is.
Hey, Dave, have you had any questions or any conversations about, so if folks are going to be on paid administrative leave for the buyout period until September 30th, are they allowed to be able to find other jobs, other work during that time?
Well, they can do.
Generally, you can't.
So, you can go get another job and leave. If you're going to work a full-time other job or a part-time other job at the same time, be aware of the moonlighting. I think the way that would work is, practically speaking, if you get caught, they'll fire you.
Yeah.
That's practically what it comes down to. Yeah.
I think that's
so
the least.
Legally, you can't, but practically, they'd have to find out. But what's the worst case scenario? They fire you, so,
I think they're not going to be doing that kind of stuff.
Right. I wouldn't go do a full-time job somewhere else. But I do think that, if you're pulling in some additional part-time work or developing your next career, starting your new business, I just think they would have to find that out. And if they did, they would fire you. Like, you're not allowed to do it. I just don't think anybody's going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Dave, are you going to have another one of these sessions soon with this whole talking about this buyout thing? Because I have a ton of friends texting me right now, like, is he going to do another one?
Sure. We can. I have to figure it. Just can't, like, literally Neil, he's on the call, sent it to me from one of his clients, like 10 minutes before the call. I'm like typing into the PowerPoint to fill it in. So yes, I need to figure out where this is going. But this document to me is the Bible. This is their roadmap. They're telling you what it is. So I need to study that and talk to some people. Then I guess we can regroup. We'll probably do another one before the 6th, I guess.
I have a
Since it
question.
seems to be
I have a
helpful.
question about reasonable accommodation. And you were saying that
Okay.
all the meetings are going to be in person. What if you have a reasonable accommodation? Are you going to be allowed to continue like to telework and call, so you can't call into the meetings?
If you have a disability, you have to, if you have already an existing disability accommodation, then it remains in place. But I can tell you that they're going to reassess everybody's accommodation, and they will make you come back to work unless you can establish that you have a disability, that the accommodation that you're describing is reasonable, that it is necessary, and it is the least necessary. Like it, there's nothing better than that. So everybody's going to be reassessed. So if you have an accommodation right now in place by law, you have that accommodation. They're violating it, you should call a lawyer. But for the future, they're going to squeeze that down as much as possible.
Okay. I don't have one in place. I'm planning on filing for one.
Yeah. Well, you should probably seek legal counsel. But if you do apply for accommodation, just be aware they are going to apply the most stringent standards. And there are multiple different ways that employers look at this, not just your reasonable accommodation. You know, it's a two-way street, and they're going to take the most restrictive view. So just be aware of that.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the OPM memo about the question about getting a job outside. And it actually, there's a Q&A on it, and it says nothing in the deferred resignation letter prevents agency employees from seeking outside employment. It goes on, but I did want to at least mention it. Not sure if you saw it in the Q&A.
At the same time?
It says,
okay, so,
the question is, can employees get another job outside of their current employing agency during the period between submission of their resignation and the final resignation date? And it says, it's on page 4, and it says the answer is nothing in the deferred resignation letter prevents agency employees from seeking outside employment during the period.
Right.
And then it says of course, there's a condition. It says employing agencies should assess what restrictions, if any, exist for employees who have resigned but remain employed, including on administrative leave by their employing agency. But I just wanted to mention that there is a Q&A on it.
Thank you. Okay,
What is the
interesting.
Q&A called? I'm sorry, what is that Q&A called that you're reading?
It's on the on that letter, on the letter that they're talking about, this memo that's talking about the deferred resignation program. It's 5 pages altogether, and when you get to, it's 2 pages of memo, a page and a half of memo, and a page, just over 2 pages of Q's and A's. And I'm looking at toward the end of the list of Q's and A's. That's one of the questions.
Got you. Wow, I have to process that.
And it also talks about, like, what if you don't get because I was asking the question about it, what if you don't get the email? Because I'm already on admin leave, so I don't have access, but it actually says what to do. So that's.
It does. What does it say?
It says, send an email directly to the employee. What do we do if employees do not receive the deferred resignation email? And the answer is either, well, this one doesn't make any sense. Either 1, send the email directly to the employee from your agency, which that doesn't make any sense, or direct the employee to visit the OPM website where they can review the email and all the associated instructions.
So while they're on leave, but then have to somehow log in OPM, and then somebody has to tell them to do that. Oh my.
Ding, 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 ding. Yes. Anyway.
Okay. So they basically, in theory, it is available to anybody, even those people on the DEI leave, but they have to figure it out and figure out how to use it.
And they also mentioned the probationary employee. Like they mentioned a couple of. Oh, you know what? Hold on one second. I just saw something else. I just scrolled down. It says the deferred resignation. The deferred resignation can only be submitted from a secure government email. If someone has accessed someone's email without authorization, okay, so yeah, so that'll be interesting. So I guess those of us who have been blocked from government email,
I do that. You can't resign.
Yeah, that just changed the answer. That's very interesting. Yeah, I'll be calling.
They're saying you can do it. You can do it if you can figure out how to do it, but there's no real way to do it because you can't access the only system that allows you to do it.
And then they say there's questions that say, what if somebody resigns on behalf of somebody else? And so clearly they already know. Yeah, they're planning that. But anyway, thank you so much. This has been really helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you. That was interesting. I will dive deeper into this in the next couple of days. It'll evolve further anyway. So,
Dave, one more question piggybacking off the reasonable accommodation. Given that the goal is to have as many federal employees quit as possible, if you legitimately have not in statement right now because you took a remote job due to your condition, would you recommend seeking reasonable accommodation, or just try to, suck it up and stick it out, or legal counsel versus using the union, or will they find a way to reasonably terminate you from your job?
I mean, you can apply, be prepared to accept, it being denied, and then choose. See, no harm in applying, but expect it to be denied. That's pretty much what I would say.
Dave, if you offer another one of these calls, how will people know about it?
Well, we now have it. Everybody on this call, we have their information. We're going to send the stuff out. So if we redo this, we'll send that when we do a new presentation, we'll send the link out to this list. And then we'll also have sent it to several like listservs, and various people send it around, clients of ours and stuff. So it'll get around. But you
We'll
will
also post
definitely
it
get
on
it.
Eventbrite again.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
There you go.
And thank you to our lone ASL interpreter who's been
Thank
working
you.
so hard.
Oh my God, you've been doing this forever. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
God, thank you. Okay.
Good night,
All right.
everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.